Content Catchup.
Hello, loyal listeners, and welcome to another edition of the Content Catchup. My name's Michael, and like always, joined by my good friend Jules. But
Hello.
today we're not alone. Yes, hello, Jules.
Thank you.
Today we're not alone, and if you are a loyal listener, we've been teasing a special guest for the last, few weeks, Jules, and it's exciting because today's the day. We're joined by someone who is a leader in Australian sports coverage, specifically her passion for women's sports and basketball. And while doing so, she wears many hats. I'm talking none other than Megan Hustwaite. Megan, welcome to the show.
Hello,
Thunderous
guys.
applause.
Round of applause.
What an introduction. I'm first-time guest, long-time listener.
I think you're our first long-time listener to come on the show, so that's great.
Do we count as long-time listeners, Jules?
Every week we're on the show, though, so I don't think that
That's
counts.
true. How are you going, Megan? How's the start of 2021 treated you?
Well, thank you, guys. It's been really good. The last little while, I guess, probably 6 weeks, sort of feels for me like it did pre-COVID. So I've got a few different things going on, and the busyness of meeting deadlines and doing a few things. So after a very weird year, like we all had in 2020, I feel like things are starting to come back in my freelance sporty world.
It makes a difference once we can all sit here and every sport is officially, I don't want to jinx us, but officially back at this moment. And I'm sure that makes a hell of a lot of change to your world, not just professionally, but socially, and everyone can go out and enjoy sport and they're consuming it again. I'm sure it's a lot of fun for everyone.
Absolutely. Let's hope it stays that way.
Look, we've been chatting, I'm not going to lie, we've been chatting for the last 20 minutes off the record. So let's jump into it. A 1 minute brief so our listeners can get to know a little bit more about you, Megan. We have a nice little sound grab that I'll play here that we don't.
You can sing it like Jules is known to sing.
No,
sing
I'm
our
not
sound
singing
grabs,
this
so we
way.
don't need him to.
I don't sing when there's guests. That's just a special thing. What is your nickname?
Pretty boring, guys. I get Megs, Megsy, Megs, some variations on Hustwaite, Husty, Huster. So I'm happy with them. I'm not a Meg.
Okay.
I never liked Meg, but there are a few people that call me it, and I'm kind of just too polite to say I hate being called Meg.
Well, I was just going to say, here's your chance. We can send this out to anyone that calls you Meg and just be like, here, listen to my show.
We can at them.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's
Not
great to have you
Meg.
on, Meg.
Way to start. What is your job title currently?
That's a good question. I think you probably touched on it best earlier. I would say wear a lot of hats, and I'm a slasher. I guess, but just not sort of entrepreneur / model / actress / presenter. But more, I would say professionally, I write and talk about sport. I'm a journalist, host, MC.
Lovely. You're right. A lot of slashes there, but all good ones. With all those slashes, do you have a favorite bit of content that you've worked on?
I reckon my favorite bit of content that I have worked on, I'm working on right now. So I'm hosting a show for SBS, a basketball show called Courtside 1-on-1, and it complements their live NBA and NBL coverage. I feel like a lot of people don't know here in Australia that you can watch the NBA and WNBA live on SBS.
Plug.
Which is pretty cool, and just a little plug for SBS. So the show is weekly. It's streamed on SBS On Demand and on Facebook. But of course, we had to go to Plan B a few weeks ago and start streaming on Twitter, which was cool. So each week I have a bit of a chat with an Australian basketball identity. So Andrew Bogut was my first guest. I've had Ryan Brokoff, Sandy Brondello, coach of the Opals, a good mix of people and stories. And then we've done a sort of supplementary little series during the NBL Cup here in Melbourne. So just a weekly show on socials. Recorded the first few episodes just on Zoom with some guests, but last week we did our first one live from John Cain Arena, and we're doing our final one tomorrow once the NBL Cup finishes up. So that's been really cool as well.
That all sounds really exciting. And making the most of the situation with going, I can't imagine like 1 week planning to be on Facebook and then, oh shit, we actually haven't got a platform to go on.
Yeah. And look, I haven't met the majority of the team that I work with at SBS. So they're all in Sydney, but they're a great team. And look, I knew that the SBS did football, soccer, and of course cycling, but they do a huge amount of sport. And I really love where they've moved with a lot of the coverage onto socials too. So it's been awesome to be part of growing that sort of basketball coverage. But yeah, it was really interesting because I thought, oh wow, what's going to happen here? And just sort of being privy to emails and being kept in the loop about how they were moving it to Twitter, where they have a World Game sort of live Twitter stream each week, which Lucy Zelic hosts.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool to see that it just moved to another platform. And then, we've been doing the NBL Cup Hub Heartbeat live on Twitter too.
That's so awesome. To round out the 1 minute brief, the question that keeps most of our guests up sweating and sleepless at night, what is your best non-work skill?
Oh, this one kept me up last night after Michael sent through the questions. I find it hard to pick out a talent or attribute of mine that's not related to work. So I'll just park that. And I'm going to say my non-work talent is being a pug mum. I'm like a stage mum, but OTT fur baby owner of my pug Coco. She's here. She's behaving at the moment, so I won't put her on screen right now, but we'll put her up at some stage.
The wonderful Coco.
I might, hold on. We'll have to, I'll talk about her and not show. Come and say hello to everyone.
We had the pleasure of meeting her before, but
oh, look at
there
her.
you go.
This is Coco. Hello.
Just lick nothing nonstop. How you going, Coco? Welcome to the show.
Typical pug. Coco's got an Instagram at Coco Pugface.
Oh.
But pretty much my Instagram is just, stories and stories of Coco. And it's just Coco and I, like we're just a little family. And as I was saying to you guys off air, I pretty much just work hard to give her a bougie life.
That's awesome.
I think being an overbearing pet mum.
I think when we put this in our 1 minute brief best non-work skill, we were thinking, I think that's my favourite one because, hey, we can relate. Jules is a cat man. I'm a dog. We have fights very often about it. Yeah. I'm a dog. Well,
He's
I'm
literally
a barker.
a dog. Barks.
That's with you. But that's probably one of my favourite non-work skills, so I love that. Let's take it back though, Megan. If my research is correct though, you grew up in the country. What sort of did sport and I guess basketball mean to you? Is basketball, I sort of know you mainly from the basketball landscape, but is that sort of, if you had a favourite sport, was that as a kid your favourite sport?
It was. I've always loved, I guess, the trifecta of basketball, footy and cricket. So grew up in Ballarat, played a bit of sport growing up. I think, in regional Victoria particularly, or regional areas, you play a bit of everything. I grew up behind where North Ballarat played in the VFL. So, I went to the footy all the time and would go and watch training and just loved spectating that. But I love TV and radio. So I was obsessed with Channel 7's footy coverage in the 90s. The cricket on Channel 9. I used to sit in my bedroom on Saturdays and listen to the 3AW footy coverage, from midday. I was an Essendon supporter growing up and I taped the 2000 grand final call on a tape, like a cassette tape. And I used to, even when I was younger than that, used to pretend that I lived across the road from the MCG and that, I was going to be on the footy coverage and write for the Herald Sun. And it just always was what I wanted to do and dreamed about. In terms of basketball, being from Ballarat, we had Robin Ma and Alison Cook, who were in the Australian Opals team, who were from Ballarat. So watching them play at World Championships and Olympic Games like Atlanta in 96, where they won the first basketball Olympic medal for Australia, was always so cool, because even though I didn't want to be a professional athlete, I knew what I wanted to do, and I felt like I could do it because they came from where I was from. So anything was possible. And we had, Tony Lockett was the hero, of our town, Steve Monaghetti, Anthony Edwards. We had lots of great sports people come from Ballarat. So they kind of inspired me that if I wanted to do something, I could. It didn't matter that I was from Ballarat, that I wasn't from the city. So I think, that really played a big role in what I wanted to do and my passion, but also the basketball.
Yeah, I feel like that's really unique, hearing that athletes from your area, like we hear people are inspired by athletes being from their area, but they've inspired you from you didn't want to be the athlete, but you knew it could happen from that country town. That's really cool. And hearing you say all these things that you wanted to do is from such a young age, and then you just did it. That's awesome. I think it's unique.
I had a cool moment a few years ago where I co-emceed the Hall of Fame for Basketball Australia, and I actually inducted Alison Cook. And that was so special because, as I said, I grew up watching her, didn't know her really until I started working in basketball. So to sort of have that full circle moment, I guess, and be part, a very small part of a big night in her life and career was really cool. But yeah, I think there's something there, identifying with people that, from the same town as you.
Yeah. Did you get the chance to tell her that?
Yeah, I have told her,
That's
which
awesome.
is cool. And I've had, done a lot with Robin Ma over the years. I think she played 180 games for Australia and was just an incredible leader. Played 10 days after having a baby. Just amazing. And so I'm so lucky to have been able to work with both of them in probably the last 12 years. Alison was managing players for a little while there, including Liz Cambage, and Robin's been involved with basketball sort of the whole time. So, yeah, I have told them because I guess I wanted them to know, that they inspired me, and perhaps athletes and people of prominence don't hear that from people other than athletes. That inspiration can be widespread.
That's so true. And because sport has so many layers. Yeah, you're right. Like, how often would a media person go up to any athlete and be like, hey, you didn't inspire me to play, but you inspired me to get involved in this great world that exists and drives so much of society, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
You named a couple of really inspirational female athletes then. Has women's sports been something you've always been passionate about? And if not, where did that passion kind of come from?
Yeah, I think so. Probably starting with, what I just mentioned with those basketballers who are from Ballarat. I did a cadetship at the Wimmera Mail Times newspaper in Horsham. I started there just after I finished year 12 when I was 17. So I spent 3 years up there and, I covered everything sports-wise, but still always women's sport. I guess predominantly the netball, the football netball clubs play such a huge role in the country. So that was just part of what we did. It wasn't and this was, 2004 to 2007. So up there, it was just sport. We didn't even sort of refer to it as women's sport. And then I had 10 years at Leader Newspapers doing sport. And that was interesting because I felt like the coverage has probably always been predominantly male-based. There was always women's footy before there was AFLW, but I don't think the coverage was there at a grassroots level. In saying that, I covered basketball 12 months of the year, and that included men's and women's. So there was still a lot of scope to cover women's sport, but it was interesting to see how it was kind of covered and perceived at a grassroots level.
Did you find with that, more people in the journalism sphere anyway, back in the day, did you feel people leaned towards wanting to do more of the men's sport, or did they lean more towards like trying to do a little bit of both, but no one really focused on women's sport as like a whole thing in itself?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I remember there was an editor that wanted to sort of have a women's sport Wednesday coverage, and I was like,
just one day.
Yeah, like why?
It's not a hashtag. Like,
yeah, it's not. But that, yeah, definitely. I mean, in saying that, I was there 10 years, and I think there was only one other female sports reporter in that time.
That's nuts.
Amongst the team, which was probably maybe 6, 7, 8 people. So that, that's interesting on reflection. I never really thought about it too much at the time. But I feel like women's sport for some in the media has become sexier or almost a gravy train, really. Like, I mean, I love that there's been an increase in women's sport. We've still got a lot of work to go in the media space, but it has created work and jobs and opportunities for some people. And I guess in the other, another space, clicks are so big, so there's opportunities for clicks and different things like that. So I still think there's a lot of work to be done with how women's sport is covered in the media, but it's changed a lot in a short amount of time.
It's funny you kind of mentioned that, like with the new opportunities that it's brought up. And this is not a knock on any male journalist or anything, but one of the knocks I have is when you see ex-footballers, in particular in the AFLW, that are now media specialists on the coverage. And I'm thinking there's a whole group of women who have been following this sport from its grassroots days up until like its infancy to now, that would know so much more about the sports, the players, like everything, that would, their opinion and their expertise in the area would be so much better on a national level than, I don't want to chuck a name out there, but like, let's say, for example, Luke Hodge or Lee Montagna, who might have an interest in and be very passionate about it, but doesn't mean that they should be afforded the opportunity before someone who knows a hell of a lot more than they do just because of their name. Yeah,
that's really interesting. I was working at SEN casually for about a decade and was part of the coverage for the first AFLW season doing Boundary. And, nobody expected what that season and that first opening night was going to be like. And I did a story, I was still a leader at that stage, on Jo Watton, who was a former player. She literally got into footy commentary from an ad, a local paper ad, to call some sort of local footy, and had worked her way up. And as of this season is calling on Channel 7, and she's just brilliant. And I feel like that should have happened in the first season.
Yep.
She should have been a major scalp for a TV or radio outlet. And she was calling radio for Croc Media throughout the last couple of years. So I need to give them credit. But yeah, there were so many experts, like her. And there's not a lot of play-by-play callers out there like her. So I'm rapt to see her now getting the platform that she deserves, and she's doing a great job on TV.
Yeah. That's a really, I don't say this often, Jules, but that's a really interesting point from you about the Tanya and Hodge nameless names.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done, Jules.
Tick.
I think I should probably might add, I understand, like we all understand that some people are on contract too, and that obviously plays a lot. And I know that being a freelancer, sometimes it can be hard to get gigs because outlets use people that are on contract because they have to. But I think there's always opportunity for us to create opportunity.
Yeah, that's a great quote. It really is.
I might put you, we didn't have this in the run sheet, Megan, but I might put you on the spot with this one. You said there's still a lot more work to be done in the women's sports space. If you could sort of have one thing, or is there one overall thing right now that you'd love to see happen, like that we need to improve?
Yeah, I think the digital space has been amazing for women's sport because it's a blank canvas to storytell and to create content. It doesn't cost anything. It generates stories. and generates content. But I still hear, and I can touch on the basketball world, people get so disappointed that there's, excuse me, not coverage of the women's basketball, say in the Herald Sun. For example, last year, Ezzy Magbagor, who's a basketball star from Melbourne, went early in the WNBA draft, debuted for Seattle Storm, won a championship in her first year. And as a freelancer, I did the story for the Herald Sun, but I pitched it to them. If a 21-year-old from Melbourne won an NBA championship in his first year, we'd have a parade. Just things like that. I think we don't, we probably don't give our female athletes the credit that they deserve, and they're standing on the international stage. Anyway, going back to sort of mainstream media, like newspapers are still huge, yes, we've moved into more digital media and social media and all that kind of stuff, but I'd still love to see women's sport feature prominently through the back pages of the papers.
I remember a great quote from Kayla George on, I think might have been Chloe Dalton's podcast, where she said, "You can't be what you can't see." I sort of stopped there. I'm like, is that like the base of it? It's so true.
Yeah, I did a talk with a little little girls, little juniors that are part of this basketball academy. I did a Zoom with them during COVID, and they played a video that they'd put together before I came on to talk. And this little girl was talking about how she opens she had a newspaper there, she opens the pages and she can't see anything on the athletes that she idolizes and goes to watch live. And it made me want to cry that a little 7-8-year-old girl is so fully aware of that and impacted by it.
It's kind of scary to think that we always, at work, one of the things that they always say is that we're not saving lives out here with the work that we do, but you forget the impact of what your work has on so many people, and you reverse it, right? So an athlete has inspired you to become a journalist, but then you as a journalist can then inspire the next generation of athlete. It's such a complete circle that you have, and you probably don't realize you're part of an ecosystem until something like that happens.
And I think you're right. Sport is fun, right? It's not like we're covering the courts or the police rounds. I'm not made. I've done that before, and I'm not made for it. I'm not good at it. So what's the worst thing that happens in sport? Injuries and losses and coaches being sacked. It's not so bad in the scheme of things. But I think you're spot on, Jules, with what you said. With that being said, sort of around your workplace, we're not saving lives, but we can inspire lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Careers and passions.
Yeah, no, it's really well said. You touched on before some of the people you idolized growing up as a kid, but I might broaden it during, I guess, the times you've spoken to tons of athletes by now. Has there anybody been, favorites, your most inspirational, maybe ones that you didn't sort of know of growing up, that you met and thought, wow, might have moved you in some sort of way?
Yeah. It's a good question. I would say last year I got to chat to someone, a female that I idolise now. Her name's Holly Rowe, and she works on ESPN covering the WNBA, covering college basketball. She's just an absolute gun, and I look to her for inspiration and improvement. And so I was watching her, every day during the WNBA season. She was in the bubble. And, a few of the girls and guys, in the basketball circles here, because I kind of have a niche role where I'm, in the WNBL, had mentioned to me, oh, you're like the Holly Rowe of Australia. You're like our Holly. So I'm like, that's
so cool.
And I thought, you know what, I want to talk to her. So I did what what we do these days, the best way to contact people, and I slid into her DM on Instagram and asked, and just said, who I was, and what I do, and that I understood she was seriously busy in the wobble, but if she ever had some time, I'd love to do a live with her. So she replied, and we did a live just before the playoffs, and she was so lovely and warm and generous, and inspiring, and it was cool to be able to share that with the people that watched it live and then watched it on my feed. And then a few months later, I went into a bubble myself for the WNBL, and she sent me a lovely message just with some tips. Not really work tips, but just, it can be quite mentally challenging being away from home for that long, a really high volume of games and work, and just a few things to pack to make my hotel room a bit more homely. And I really appreciated that. And I, did everything she said, and it helped my experience in the hub I was in. So that was really cool, and I hope I get to meet her one day, whether that's when I head over to the WNBA, or if she comes out here we've got the Women's World Cup next year. But there's a bit of a Insta friendship that's been established there, and I'd never have the chance to speak to her if it wasn't for social media.
So amazing, like the people that we've met as well. Like we would have reached out to you via social media, and that's how this all happens. And you can just collaborate and like work with so many more people right now, and that's a great thing now that's happening in our community. So we're all promoting our work. We're getting over that tall poppy syndrome, especially in Australia, and just being like, actually, nah, fuck it. Like, I'm good at what I do, and I'm going to be proud of what I do. And I want other people to know that as well. And I want to surround myself with people that are going to accept that. I think that's the greatest thing that I've come across lately.
Yeah. I love that.
Going to take it back. So you were obviously inspired by an athlete, but let's reverse it. Let's say you were talking to a young you or a young aspiring female journalist. What would you kind of tell them, and what tips would you give them to help them in their career and progress and make it to somewhere like you are, like that high level?
I would say like initiative is everything. And it's still, I think it's been one of my best strengths. So like when I was in high school, I was writing for the local paper in Ballarat. And just, I've always had that sort of initiative. Even now, like I've got no qualms in DMing people or seeking out work or pitching and hustling. And I would say the strike rate is pretty successful. And if it's not, I feel like people really take notice and respect that you've hustled and, taken the time to make contact. So I think that's really important. And whether that's the initiatives around creating a portfolio for yourself, whether it's on social media, a Twitter account or an Instagram, like as I said before, it's a blank canvas for creating content, sharing content, getting a following, and just opening your eyes and your mind to everything that's out there. And I think mentors are important too. I remember when I was working up in Horsham, and it was difficult at times. I was the first female to cover sport up there, and I was a teenager, and like I copped some nasty shit from people up there at times, and I didn't really have a female to talk to or to get some advice from. At that stage, there was obviously Caroline Wilson doing amazing things, as she had been for a long time at the age, and there was some great women on TV doing boundary writing and things like that. And so I emailed a few females, in the footy industry predominantly, and the one person that got back to me was Callie Underwood. So this was probably 2005. And so when I was in Melbourne next, I caught up with her for coffee at Channel 10. She was working there, and the fact that she gave someone she didn't know or didn't have to, you know, the time of day to reply to an email and have a coffee, I've never forgotten that. And I've, you know, bumped into her along the journey in both our sort of roles over the years. So I think that's important. And as we sort of said, you know, you can get in touch with people so much easier these days. So, I love getting people's advice and input and just bouncing ideas. I still get really excited after doing interviews that I, you know, loved or am inspired by. So I think just having someone to bounce off and get advice if you need is really important, no matter where you are in your career.
There's always someone that has or is currently going through what you're going through. And I think you're right, like being able to bounce that off and hear that you're not batshit crazy for feeling a certain way or thinking something or wanting to go down a different path is always helpful. And something that our community is really good at, I feel, just like talking to each other.
I agree. And just that feeling, you know, I've got a few people that if I, you know, get a gig or land a story or I've done a really, you know, an interview that I really enjoyed or felt was really good, those people that I'll text or call, and same thing them to me, and just sharing that like adrenaline, I guess. And it's good when it runs because you know that you still love your craft.
I have a huge appreciation for, it's such a small thing, but a common ground that I'm finding with a lot of people that we speak to, my journey as well, that there's always a point where somebody has responded to a random message of yours. And I think it's probably more of a note for the people that are in the industry now or sort of at a level where they're working for a big company, that how much of a difference it can make to respond to a random DM or a random email. Because I don't know if you agree, Jules, but so many people we've spoken to, there's always that common ground of somebody responded to me. And it's such a simple thing to do from our perspectives, but so many people don't do it.
You've actually just reminded me, Bucks, that I still haven't replied to that person in our inbox. So if
we'll cut that bit.
It's coming. It's coming.
Practice what you preach.
No, it's coming. I promise it's coming.
Boy, oh boy. If you're listening, we'll get to it.
I'm going to reply. I promise. The reply will come.
I think it's from a fantasy football page, so we apologise. But
you shame them too.
Plenty of editing to do this one, Julian. I want to take it back to the hub experience. So quick one on the hub. I know I found myself loving the WNBL, and it was in Townsville, wasn't it, the hub?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think there's something the WNBL can take from? I felt it probably because I found myself watching it most nights. But do you think there's something they can take from that hub life of why it was successful? Like, I know I was on Twitter a lot of those nights, as I do with basketball, and I'm sure a lot of people do, but I felt like people were talking about it so much, and I'm not exactly sure. I'm sure that it was accessible on KO was a huge reason. I know in past seasons I've asked the question multiple times to family members, my brother, friends, like, where can we actually watch the WNBL consistently? What are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. I think it was the perfect storm. COVID really was the best thing to happen to the WNBL, to go from a 5-month regular season. I've been saying to a few people, like, we would have just had the grand final now. So we weren't up against really any other sport other than sort of the back end of the WBBL. So to have every game on KO, to have games on free to air and Foxtel for the first time, so 4 broadcast games a week, was incredible. But I think it had that feel of probably what the BBL had in the early years, and you just touched on it, Michael, you know, sitting down and watching it sort of every night, enjoying and engaging with others through the experience on Twitter. There was one game in particular where an 18-year-old girl, Jade Melbourne from Victoria, hit the winner for Canberra, and it was just an awesome play and shot. And Paddy Dangerfield retweeted it or quote tweeted it, and I was like, this would never happen. Like, that would never have happened before. That was so cool. That him doing that meant so much to our league. and just the
Yeah.
visibility. So I think it was perfect. I mean, speaking to a lot of the players, they loved playing every second day. Some of that was because they didn't have to practice. I think there's something there for future years and seasons, and we'll be heading into the 42nd season of the WNBL.
Wow.
So whether, you know, it mightn't be 2 months because there was a lot of games, you know, in that short period, but in terms of condensing it and getting that captive audience and not getting lost around so much other sport over summer, I think there's definitely something there.
I think you touched on the youth of Jade Melbourne and Charlotte Hill. I think most people now, well, I felt like during that time and probably now know who they are, and that's so important. Do you think the youth of a sort of Australian talent, do you think the lack, so there's no imports in the hub, right? Yeah. Do you think that would help? Or is that something they probably wouldn't think about, just keeping that moving forward, right?
Yeah. I think it worked really well last season because we saw like Jade Melbourne was picked up at the last minute by Canberra and was starting, you know, in her first season as an 18-year-old. That wouldn't usually happen. So there was lots of positives. There were more opportunities for local talent. We will go back to the imports this season. I think that's important too. We're seeing in the NBL at the moment how great the import talents are. And, you know, from a WNBL point of view, we get some of the best players, you know, from around the world, particularly the US, coming here. So, yeah, it's a bit of a balance. How can you continue to promote that young talent and give them those opportunities at that high level, but we still want to attract the best players because the WNBL is the second best women's basketball comp in the world.
Yeah, tough middle ground.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take it back from NBL because basketball, if for all the listeners they know, but basketball's not my specialty. I'll take the cricket. I'll take the cricket questions, but I'm not great with the old basketball. But I want to ask you. You've spoken about slashes and hats. What do you have a favorite role that you've played, or favorite slash or hat that you've worn over the years that you'd love to just make that your full-time kind of concentration?
Yeah. I guess it's funny, like I mentioned before, about all the things I dreamed of doing and pretended I did when I was really little, and that kind of involved writing, TV, radio, which is kind of what I do now. Yeah. So I've been freelance for nearly 4 years. 4 years in June, and I love that I have a mix of work. I guess I hope for that to continue. I don't want to work for one employer. Or in one role. I guess my goal now is just to keep amplifying that. So I love writing. I still get a thrill when, you know, my byline's in the paper, or tell it what I think is a good story, or the interviewee is really happy with how the yarns come up. I sort of got into TV through the WNBL, but again, that was by me making contact with the producer. I did that on a Tuesday and I was on air on the Saturday. Wow. Which was really cool. And then I love MC work. I really love that, you know, working off the energy of a crowd. I do that mainly in the sports space. It's starting to come back now after COVID. So I've had probably like a highlight in each of those. Like I'd say I've had like a highlight in each medium. But I hope to continue working across them, but just amplifying and growing, you know, in each of those roles.
The ultimate freelancer, almost.
Yeah.
With something for everyone.
Yeah, I think it's good though. Like, I think there shouldn't be not pressure. There shouldn't be any sort of, I'm just going to say it, pressure, because I can't think of a better word. Good one, Michael. That you can't, that you have to settle on one thing. Like, I think it's really good, and we talk about it all the time, how you have to wear many hats. So yeah, no, I like that answer. You answered this earlier on, but pinch me moments. I think it's important that we all get to this point where if we are lucky enough to be in the industry that we've wanted to be in. Have you had any other moments where you have sort of felt like, wow, like I've made it where I sort of dreamed of as a kid?
Yeah. Well, I might mention, like just touched on, about sort of across the three.
Yeah.
Did I drop out there?
No, we're all good, I think. Yeah.
Am I
It's gone
frozen?
slow.
No.
No, I think you're right now.
Yeah.
Mine was a bit slow, but
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's all right.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I might sort of pick out one from wearing each of those hats, which we just touched on. So probably in terms of writing, getting my first front page with the Herald Sun and Daily Telegraph was really cool. TV, I guess, as I said, making that contact with the producer and being on air within a few days and was a dream. That was WNBL. I guess having written about the league and then starting a podcast, doing that for about 10 years, and then sort of making the move into TV, and then going from doing a little halftime segment to sideline and some hosting for 2 years with Fox to the Hub season where I was the only commentator in the Hub, and having that responsibility being the eyes and ears. And then with MC work, I've been to so many functions at Crown, at the Palladium Room over the years, and I got to do one grand final week a couple of years ago. I did a little segment, like hosted a panel as part of a grand final breakfast. So to look at that room, I think it was 1,500 people and the huge screens, and I know that kind of scares the shit out of some people, but I love that shit. So
That's so cool.
that was really cool. And 1,500 people at a function sounds so crazy right now.
It does.
Yeah, no, it's true. I had a really important note that you mentioned what you go back to is hustling. So we're talking about nicknames. How does everyone feel about Megan Hustwaite?
Well,
Pretty good.
I get called that. I mean, I've got lots of variations on that name. I mentioned Courtside One-on-One, which I'm doing for SBS, and we get each of the guests to do a promo for their episode, and they say, join me on Courtside One-on-One with Megan Hustwaite. That sports team are putting together a little highlights reel for socials of everyone butchering my name.
That's good.
But they also stuff Megan up. Like, I've got different, and look, there's a few Americans in there, so it's more variations on Megan.
Oh, Megan. Oh.
But also, I feel like, I mean, it's not a place to be talking about taking husbands' names, but I like my name. I feel like that's my byline.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm sticking with it.
Love it. I think you've kind of answered this question before, but throughout this chat, but I want to ask anyway. It's 2021. We've had a shit 2020, but we're turning the corner in 2021. What's on the horizon for you this year, next year? What kind of comes next for you?
Well, that's a cool one, Jules. I guess I generally, as a freelancer, work my years out by summer and winter sports seasons.
Yep.
Yeah, so I always have a few pillars of things that I do that are good to know that I've got coming up, for stimulation of my brain, but also, for work and financial purposes. So I'm sort of moving at the moment out of some summer sports. So for the last few years, I've hosted and commentated the live stream for the Premier Men's and Women's Cricket Finals, which is the level, I guess, under, Victoria, the Bushrangers here. So I've got those coming up in the next few weeks, which is awesome. Still lots of basketball with Courtside, NBL going until June. NBL 1, maybe an Olympics.
Ooh.
But it's so hard to even think about that right now, given everything that's happening. But I've got the dates free.
So if anyone's listening, Megan's free. Take it.
Well, I just never talk about it because I speak so much with the athletes who are kind of training. Well, they are training for it without knowing that it's going ahead. So, it will form a big part of my work, whether I'm here or over there. And look, hopefully MC stuff gets back. It has a little bit, but I think we all want to get back to, well, we've enjoyed getting back to live sport, and those functions and corporate hospitality is such a big part of that game day experience. But for the clubs and leagues, you know, they need to get their sponsors back in and start doing that. So, I've done a few events on Zoom, but I can't wait to get back in front of, you know, a big crowd again and look at people and feel that energy, you know, kind of before a big sporting game.
Well, hopefully, don't know if I can say this, but hopefully Carlton can organise you and then we can bump into you in the future.
Slide in my DMs at Carlton FC.
Well, it's Jules then. Jules manages.
Do Jules?
Yeah, that's my team manages that.
Okay.
But yeah, that's one of my jobs.
Don't left me on Ray.
I
hope there's no bad past conversations now.
So this is one of my biggest downfalls. But I'm terrible at reading text messages, and I've currently got 287 unread text messages.
It hurts me every week. Every time we talk about this,
it just keeps going up.
Does that not give you anxiety?
It does, but the thing is, like, I have the top ones, like, that people I regularly talk to are the ones that I reply to. Like, if Barks messages me, it might take me a day, but I get back to him. Wow, it's the ones that I like read, because I have that preview thing that pops up, and I read them, and I'm like, I don't really need to reply to that. I'll just leave it. But then it just stacks up and up and up. So, I'm not the best at reading DMs, so just keep hassling me if anyone is trying to get in touch with me.
Or if you're trying to get in touch with at Carlton FC.
Yes, at Carlton FC. There's a team managing that, so I'm guessing someone checks them more often than I do.
You're guessing, says the bloke that's meant to be managing your team.
Yeah. Hopefully no one's listening to this. I want to throw this past you, Megan. We normally do Egg of the Week each week. Put you on the spot here, but would you like to participate in the egging of someone?
Do you know what that is first?
So it's basically something that you've seen through the week, or someone over the last couple of weeks that you think, geez, that's bloody stupid. How have you done that? And this is your chance to crack the proverbial egg over their head.
Have you guys got one? Can I chime in on yours?
Absolutely. I reckon Barks has got one lined up.
Okay.
I've got one. I'm just trying to look what it was, though. Hang on.
I also noticed something funny just then when you went through like your kind of list of what's on the horizon. When you were talking about the Bushrangers and the Premier Cricket, I was nodding like, yeah, this is great. And then Barks was complete like deadpan, nothing. And then you switched to the NBL and the WNBL, and Barks is like, yeah, that's
basketball.
You've got to have a good mix. I do have one egg. I can kick us off.
Yeah, kick us off.
It's actually in the basketball world, and I feel a bit rude egging whoever this college player is, but I'm going to share my screen. Usually the video lags a bit sharing screen, but let's have a look.
Cheers, you want to bring up anything else?
Yeah, I was multitasking. Hang on. Let's just pause this. All right, so college game, this will lag, but I'll just play it. The hit a game winner. Look at the blue guy on the team. He's full on in the celebration, and he's just the poor guy. I've never seen an opponent player that has lost the game when they're in the other team's celebration, and he's full on down on himself. Look at it.
It's just like he falls into their pile.
He's in the middle of it. Anyway, I feel bad egging you, but you're an egg. Just get out of the way.
Anything better than watching people fall over?
I know. I'm going to just keep watching it.
He's so clumsy, like when he falls over as well. It's like a giraffe going down like really, really slowly. Had every opportunity to get out of that one.
I feel
that is a good one. Let's egg him.
Let's do it. Did that give you any time to think of an egg? Otherwise, Jules, did you have one?
I actually, I don't have an egg of the week.
Pressure's on me
this week. Yeah, I'm really sorry. I actually.
Can I give one that's not sport?
Yeah, absolutely. It can be anything.
Okay, so you guys would be well aware, I'm sure, of the celeb spell check account on Instagram.
Yes, it's hilarious. Love it.
So much to unpack there, but celeb spell check put up a post last night, and it was of Lorinska, who I guess is best known for being on. I think it only was 2 seasons, but it definitely got bumped to like the 10:30 double episode on Tuesday nights on Channel 7. Yummy Mummies. She was on that, and I think she's a model. Yeah. Anyway, so she's made her own clothing label, and I think it's called Royale. So, been launched. I think this week it was launched. So, her friends and fellow influencers have been gifted the clothes. And so Beck Judd is a friend and fellow influencer entrepreneur. So she put a post up of herself wearing the outfit, and one of her children was in an outfit as well. So Celeb Spellcheck's uploaded a post of Lorinska launching the label, Beck in the clothes, and swipe across for the third pic, which is just absolute gold. Said outfit on the rack at Hampton Vinnies.
Oh boy.
And so the range was launched this week, so there's no way that a punter has ordered, received,
and just donated it.
I just thought that was outstanding.
That's incredible. That is a big egg. Nah, but I think that'll do for eggs of the week. Megs, thanks so much for jumping on today. It's Saturday afternoon, so really appreciate your time. It's been such an eye-opening chat for us from so many levels. Like, obviously we see journalists as content creators, but we don't see them in the same like frame, not in a bad way, but we probably don't consider everything that goes on behind the scenes to give us that content that just pops up on our screen or in our newspapers or on our radio or wherever you are. So thank you so much for explaining that world to us a little bit more and to all our listeners. It's been a real pleasure having you on.
Thanks, guys. It's been so fun. I might just leave you with this because timing is everything. I wrote a piece in the Weekend Lift Out in the Herald Sun today on Ozzy Kahia, who is a businessman and racing owner. So he's got a few horses, but one won the Caulfield Cup last year, and Sir Dragonet won the Cox Plate. And he's got Sir Dragonet running in the All-Star Mile today. And I live across the road from Moonee Valley, so I've got a very good view of the race course. But they weren't sure whether Sir would run today because he likes a wet track. So the night before the Cox Plate last year, Ozzy was out at 2 a.m. in his backyard, basically doing a rain dance. It was forecast to rain, but it hadn't. And then it started raining, and Sir Dragonet won. It has just started pouring here during our conversation.
You're right, it has.
So I'm just wondering whether that's an omen for Sir Dragonet in the All-Star Mile today. But hey, if you want something to read the story because he's a really interesting guy. I knew nothing about him before I spoke to him, but yeah, I'll leave you with that little bit of content.
That's perfect.
Thank you, and a big thank you to Coco too.
Oh yeah. Coco's asleep, but we'll wake her up today.